Photographic Composition, Lecture 9, The Natural Landscape, Part 2. This astonishing picture by Paul Strand is no less astonishing because Strand is so much more readily identified with his urban photography. But during the 20s and 30s, he spent more and more time in the natural landscape, attempting to record it as faithfully and clearly as he possibly could. All of these twisted vines and this tree, there's a layering here that's quite remarkable and not seen often, I don't think, in pictures. This is also typical of the kind of work that Strand was doing at this time, moving in and photographing close-ups of plants and formations, rock formations, that sort of thing. Here, either coming across this scene after a rain or first thing in the morning when there was dew on everything. It has an idyllic quality to it, but it is also from the point of view of a real modernist whose primary concern was recording what he was seeing as accurately as he possibly could. And he also photographed much wider landscapes. At the same time that he was doing this work, Edward Weston was also embarking on his explorations of the natural landscape. They were certainly aware of each other, even though they were operating primarily on either coast from each other. But I think going after very much the same kinds of things, and seeing forms in the wider view and also in the much tighter, more macro view of things. Strand, there were certain areas of primarily in California, that Weston would go back to repeatedly. These are of Oceania, which is famous for its dunes. And I can't help but see the Weston's nudes as well when I see these. These have a very anthropomorphic quality to them. This is in the Sierras, and it's a photograph of the oldest living thing in the world. I believe it's a juniper tree. Weston's best friend was Ansel Adams, and they often went out and photographed together. And if you believed Weston, he taught Adams everything that he knew about processing and exposing and making prints. But there are others who contend that, in fact, Adams was the one who really created a science out of it, which would become the zone system, and which he wrote about, explained and wrote about extensively I believe in the 50s, in a series of books. But one of Adams' gifts was his ability to what he referred to as pre-visualize. He could see a scene and know how it ought to be exposed and then processed to bring out the widest range of tones possible. This is one of his best-known images, Clearing Winter Storm, of the Yosemite Valley. And regardless of excuse me, what one might think of the subject matter and Adams' approach, his ability to create compelling prints is undeniable, I think. And interesting that over time his style in printing changed. Relatively early on, his prints were relatively flat, lacked contrast, and it was a choice that he made. And as he got older and more experienced, he favored more contrasty images, such as this one, which also has lots of rich tones in between black and white. He was certainly drawn to trees and other living things. But Yosemite is, of course, the subject that he's most closely known for having documented. This is an image of the Tetons in the Snake River, made in 1942. And a scene that would be revisited, but by another photographer. This is by Minor White. And as you can see, it's taken from almost the same vantage point. The framing is somewhat different. The Adams image includes the curve of the Snake River at the bottom of the frame, and White's does not. And I think part of that is because White was something of he was on a mystical quest, and wherever he saw the mystical, he would try to find ways to record it. So the light bursting through the clouds and casting shadows from the mountains was more important to him than the curve in the Snake River. He also did some experimentation with infrared film, which turns green to white. So as a result, these trees and the grass on the ground have all gone absolutely white, even though this was shot in summer. It looks like it's a snow scene. Again, White looking for the mystical in the landscape. This cloud has a very sensual but also mysterious quality to it. Not only for the cloud itself, but its reflection in the water. Wynn Bullock was another California photographer who favored the natural landscape. And if anything, was perhaps a little closer to Minor White in temperament and his beliefs about what he was seeing. But was also very skilled and capable of creating very moving landscapes. Around the same time, starting in the 20s and 30s, Europeans, of course, were also interested in recording similar things to Americans. This is by Albert Renger-Patch, who engaged in an extended project that he referred to as Die Welt ist schön, the world is beautiful, and found extraordinary locations and recorded them, I think, beautifully. I mean, this is an astonishing picture to me. Partly for the light, but also for its framing. And the layers of trees getting lighter and lighter and lighter as they progressively move away from the camera. He also included farm scenes and scenes that would be more accessible generally to the public. And back in the States, color photography, which was still not considered fine art, but was in fact something that was pursued by a number of photographers, specifically photographers who were working for a publication called Arizona Highways, which I believe was published by the Auto Club as a means of boosting tourism. But they also attracted a number of remarkable photographers, I think the best of which was Elliot Porter, who just saw in color. And the natural landscape was always his milieu. And he was able to, year after year, come up with astonishing pictures like this one. And the light was not always as dramatic as it is here, but the color always keeps coming back to the color. And here showing the sun casting rays between these trees. And this is a location that has been shot to death, as it were, especially in recent years with digital cameras. This has been emulated over and over and over again, and I don't know that anybody's done it as well as this. There's also an incredible delicacy to some of his images. This has a sense of like filigree or lace to it. And the color tones are in a very narrow spectrum. Most of the color is either light brown or yellow, and with just a slight tinge of red. Almost a black and white aside from those yellow and reddish brown objects. Again, very delicate, beautifully composed. And by that I mean with these sprays of plants going off in different directions have a rhythm to them that almost seems planned. Foxtails, that's what they are.